Welcome to the webinar on Activation, Revitalization, and Transformation Grants Program, the ART Phase 2 funding. You're going to learn a lot of information today, so just so that you understand, this is going to be recorded and will be available afterwards on the center website, and it's available on the New Jersey Economic Development Authority website too. We're really pleased today to have our well, let me introduce myself first. I'm Debbie Duncan. I'm the Director of Education Services here at the New Jersey Center for Nonprofits. I've been with the center for 18 years, and among other things, I work on these workshops and webinars and help desk resource sharing. We provide information to all New Jersey 501c3s, but we do have some extra benefits for our members. For example, members will get priority access and more in-depth assistance with the help desk requests. We have some exclusive networking events. Your job postings are free, and there are some other cost savings. All of our events right now this year, we're doing free for members and then a small fee for non-members, unless it's something like this, which is government provided and very important for everybody to get. The most effective and least visible work that we do is our advocacy. And that means meeting with legislators and policymakers, discussing the needs and interests of the nonprofit sector so that they're familiar with it, and then informing the nonprofits and the public about what legislation is, what policies are, what the issues are, what are the challenges and advantages. So that's a very important piece of what we do. We also do some research. We have some statistics. We do an annual review every year, a survey every year, and then we also provide education such as this webinar. Mark your calendars. We have our annual conference is December 4th. There'll be more about that, and we have publications and a lot of information on our website. The New Jersey Center for Nonprofits is also a member of the National Council of Nonprofits, and those who are members of the New Jersey Center are also members of the council. And just so that you know, wherever you go in the United States, there is going to be a nonprofit association nearby, and with information about that particular state. So you're not alone, and we want you to know that there are a lot of resources out there. So for right now, let's move on to our program about the ART grant program. I'm going to introduce Barbara Bickart, who is the Senior Advisor for Arts and Culture, and we have Matt Boyle, who is the Director of the Community Development and Strategic Initiatives. So I want to introduce them now, and we'll start our program.
Thanks so much, Debbie. Welcome to everybody. Super excited to see that so many folks are showing up for this. We are super grateful to Governor Murphy's leadership in arts and culture, and consequently Lieutenant Governor Tahisha Way. They are both champions, in huge ways for the arts. For arts and culture, they really get it. They understand that arts and culture is an economic driver. They understand the benefits and values of nonprofit. I think they also understand, the ways in which the nonprofit sector and the arts and culture folks in particular are really challenged in this time of diminishing funding sources. And so, they are leaning in and have leaned in to finding ways to support arts and culture, and that has kind of trickled down to our Chief Executive Officer, Tim Sullivan, and the EDA is leaning into supporting arts and culture in all new ways. I've been here for a little over a year, and the role that I'm in, Senior Advisor of Arts and Culture, is it's a brand new role at the EDA. I'm the first one in it, and happily, I think we've been able to move the needle at the EDA and to do a lot with our rewriting of this program to make it more organically attuned to who the arts and culture folks really are. And I apologize, my neighbor just started mowing the lawn. Are you guys hearing me okay?
No, you're good.
Okay.
I hear nothing.
Oh, okay. So here are some of the supported programs that the EDA has supported in terms of arts and culture in the past. And now let's jump right into the very specifics of this program. So this program is $15 million of funding from the American Rescue Plan. We are working with this federal funding to mitigate the negative impacts of COVID. The way that we have chosen to do that with ART phase 2 is to not only lift 31 municipalities around the state that have been hurt in particular by reduced commuter traffic because of COVID, but to do to also lift the arts and cultural sector by incentivizing nonprofits that are focused in arts and culture. So, you know, we're happy with the fact that, you know, it's kind of a double-edged thing. We're lifting the communities and also lifting the arts and culture sector, which is really struggling. Very quickly, I'm going to go over this. We go into all of this in more detail. So this is the quick overview of what the program is. It supports the creation of public space activation initiatives, placemaking projects, public art installations, art space projects and activities. It will do that in 31 eligible municipalities. Let me pause here and just say that who's eligible to apply? Nonprofits can apply. 501c3, C6s, C19s. They do not also have to be located within the eligible municipality. We'll talk more about that. You have to be a nonprofit to apply. The projects or programs or initiatives themselves must take place within 1.5 miles of the active rail station in the eligible municipality. The nonprofit does not also have to have its address inside that municipality. I say it over and over again because it's a question that comes up over and over again for us. And so we just want to make that really clear. We are aiming right now to open the application, give or take, the third week in September. That's not completely nailed down yet, but that's our target date. We're hopefully looking to open around September 24th, so keep your eyes peeled for that. Once the application launches, it will be open for 60 calendar days before the deadline. What we are asking folks to do who are applying is please try to get your applications in before that last day. It's a scored application process. The applications will come in, and if they meet all of the eligible criteria with the appropriate documentation, you know, that you are a nonprofit and so on, we'll go into what those documents are. You get advanced to the scoring phase. In the scoring phase, applications will be rated on a 0 to 100 scale, and you have to get a minimum of 65 points in order to be recommended for a grant award. Projects have to be completed by December 31st, 2026. While we're talking about the timeline here, let me just say that we're hoping to launch the application third week, give or take, in September. 60 calendar days, it will be open, which means it will be closing, give or take, around Thanksgiving. Our goal is going to be to get funds out to folks late spring, very early summer of 2025, and then projects have to be completed by end of 2026. The application, the award sizes are, you apply for a minimum of 100,000, maximum of 500,000, and there's no application fee, which has been a big win for us in terms of supporting the nonprofit sector. And the way that we were able to rewrite this. Okay, so these are all of the very basic eligibility criteria. You have to be a nonprofit to apply. Any applicants have to be in substantial good standing with the EDA, Department of Labor, Department of Environmental Protection. You must have current tax clearance at the time of application. One application per EIN. So one application, one proposal per EIN. A question came in this week that said, can we be the lead application? Can we be the lead applicant and also partner on another application? Yes, you can.
Oh.
You can't come in with a partner, however, on the same project. So one EIN per application for a unique and specific project. Nonprofit applicants do not have to be located within the same municipality. I already mentioned that, and that will come up again in the presentation. Ineligible applicants, government entities, municipalities, for-profit entities, any applicant or affiliate who received A.R.T. Phase 1 funding. I keep going. Here are the 31 municipalities where projects, programs, or initiatives can take place. So if you're in one of these municipalities, you're good to go. Maybe you're nearby. Maybe you're in Piscataway and you want to do a project in New Brunswick. That is totally legit, right? Your nonprofit address might be in a town like Hoboken. You can do the project in Jersey City. Okay, I'm going to keep going. How do you figure out if the project that you're considering is in the eligible catchment area or in the eligible location? We have provided this mapping tool. I'm going to go to it very quickly. I'm going to struggle through the technology for just a minute to take you there. So what you do is on our website, on the web, on our program page, you can go to the eligibility tab. There's a link there to the mapping tool. There's a link in the PowerPoint presentation, which is under the informational webinar heading in our sidebar. In the PowerPoint presentation, you can get to this link. Also in the applicant checklist, which is in the sidebar of the program page, you can get to this link. So you have multiple ways to access the link. Go to the link, click on the link, and it takes you to this. You can all see this? Matt, you see my map?
Oh, yep, see the map.
Okay, so once you get to this, you click right here, ART Phase 2 eligible areas. Click on that. You go up here to the address bar and you type in the project location where you're thinking of doing a mural, or where you're, it's the address of, sorry, I can't type and talk at the same time. Oh, wait a minute. Okay, so you type in the address because this is the site where you're, where you want to do a mural on the side of the building, or where you want to do a street performance, or it's the address of the gallery space or the empty storefront that you're going to be renting for the purposes of this program to do all kinds of programming and a whole festival. You type that into this address bar, you click on the magnifying glass, the address shows up in the pink area in New Brunswick, so you know that you are indeed within the eligible area that is in 1.5 miles of the rail station in New Brunswick. You're good to go. What you have to give us in their application is a printout of this page and proof that the project you are proposing is in fact in the eligible zone. Okay, I'm going to keep going. So that's how that works. If you're thinking of a project that is multiple site, you need to do this for each site, right? So if you're thinking of this, a performance festival, it's going to happen in multiple locations in the municipality. Do each site. Did I just Give me 1 second. Okay,
Barbara, can I
Um,
jump in with a question?
sure.
Somebody's asking about accelerating their 501c3 status. Does the organization have to have IRS determination of 501c3 status to participate?
Yes, we're using the IRS determination letter.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Okay, and I can talk, Stacy, we can talk about that afterwards.
One other thing, just because it seems important to say at this juncture, is one of the things, and you'll see this as we get to scoring criteria, is the EDA is looking at the organizational history. So, if you're a brand new, if you are a brand new nonprofit and don't have a history yet doing what you are proposing, you're not going to have a strong application as an organization that's been around for a few years, several years, that can say, here's what we're proposing, performance festival, here's our track record of having done that sort of thing. It may be that you're scaling up, right? That you're doing a performance festival that's a much bigger scale than anything you've done, but what we're looking for is proof to us that you can scale up. Do you have the supports in place? We'll talk more about this, but I want to say that from the get-go, because that question has come up, and because this is a nonprofit audience, it's better you'll have a stronger application if you have a history. Okay, eligible project activities. So what sort of activities are we looking for? This first bullet point is language that goes back to A.R.T. phase 1 and the way that was developed and conceptualized. Second bullet point is the language that we have, and again, happily been able to add to A.R.T. phase 2. To me, this language is, we worked really hard at this language and at really specifying through this language the kinds of activities that are organic to who arts and culture nonprofits are. Activities initiatives include, but are not limited to, art exhibitions, performance festivals, parades, concerts, concert series, film and video screenings, and cultural programming. In my opinion, this means that the activities, initiatives, programs, projects are open-ended enough so that you all can do what you really do. In other words, if you're I use performance a lot just because it feels like it's an obvious, easy thing to do. If you're a performance-based nonprofit, you don't need to go, oh, we really want this funding. It's really going to help us. It's going to help our community. We have to do public space activation. We're going to figure out how to create a sculpture park or public sculpture in the underutilized park down the street. If that's not what you do, don't do that. Figure out how to do more robust programming projects around what you do, around performance. So that you're lifting yourselves, you're lifting the community through what you know how to do and do best. Okay. Funding can also be used to support operational costs for applicants to execute your project. So we didn't put a cap on the percentage of funding that you include in your sources and uses. That's EDA language for budget document. We didn't put a cap on that. Nonprofits are often used to being allowed to include 10%. That's kind of a standard, right? At least in the arts and culture universe, for include 10% in your budget of whatever your budget proposal is for this project, program, or initiative, include 10% for general operating costs. We didn't put a number on that. We didn't put a percentage or a cap on that. Give us what you think is reasonable in terms of your overhead, your staff, your Xeroxing, right? All the stuff. the infrastructure costs that you will have to allot to making this project or program happen, and include that in your budget. Next slide. Why do I have trouble? Okay, I'm sorry.
If you
Okay.
just
Ineligible project uses. Acquisition cost of real estate, leases for real estate extending beyond 12/31/26. We'll talk about that in a second. Leases for incubator space, real estate construction, major infrastructure improvements, demolition to create vacant land. These are throwbacks to ART phase 1. We wanted to be super clear with folks if they were familiar with that. There is nothing remotely related to real estate in ART phase 2. Those things that were in phase 1 are ineligible this time around.
Okay, Barbara, your slide did not advance.
I'm sorry. Okay, sorry. Okay. Second bullet point here is the thing to talk about. Leases for real estate extending beyond 12/31/26. How is that relevant to what this program is? If you are a visual arts organization and you're thinking, we're going to do, we're going to expand our programming, we're going to do this thing for 6 months where it's a festival, it's visual art, we're doing community-based, visual art making workshops, we're getting everybody involved, and then we're going to have this grand show all over this municipality and empty storefronts and all kinds of other sites, and we have to rent we have to rent additional gallery space somewhere in order to expand your footprint to do what it is that you want to do. You can get a lease for that, right? But your lease needs to show that you're not just expanding the footprint to grow your organization or grow the footprint of your organization. It's for the express purposes of this program, right, that you're proposing, of the project that you're proposing. So we need a lease that demonstrates that. It can't go beyond the life of this program. Application process. So we already addressed this. The applications will be accepted during a 60-day calendar period. Matt, I think we addressed all of these. Matt, do you want to add anything to this slide?
Well, I think it's the next slide, Barb, goes into eligibility documentation, or the slide after. We could just
disbursements we didn't talk about. You get one check at the end. Additional documentation. Matt, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so part of the requirements, so this is post board. So the process is going to be, which I think is the next slide. The documents are broken down into eligibility documents versus scoring documents. So I'll start here and then go through the whole process.
And I was the only one here.
So the eligibility documents are, you apply for this grant. EDA staff reviews the application for these documents. If you don't have the documents, then you would be declined prior to going to scoring. The process of reviewing the eligibility documents are, staff reviews them. We send out one 10-day, what's called in EDA world, cure letter, which is post application. You'll have 10 days to send in the correct documentation. We'll send that through via email. And these are the documents that, are required to be scored. So an applicant has to show that you're in the right location by the NJEDA mapping tool, which Barb went over. Must show a state formation document, an IRS determination letter, which I think was the earlier question, that you are a nonprofit, a project timeline, which shows the start and end date, and it confirm it ends by December 31st, 2026, because that's part of, these are federal monies. So they all have to, all projects have to demonstrate that they will end by December 31st, 2026. A New Jersey state tax clearance certificate, a project source and use, which there's a template for. It's a very simple document. It's just the sources of the project and then the uses of the project. The project sources have to equal uses for the application to move on, as well as the amount listed in the application that you're requesting for the ART grant must be listed as a project source in that exact amount on the source and use document. So it has to tie. And then just all expenses have to be eligible that are listed for the project in both the project summary and the source and use. So that's the eligibility documentation part of it. And EDA staff's review of the applications prior to scoring. EDA staff is not reviewing any scoring documents. They'll be when you submit your application, you can't update the scoring doc. There'll be no period. There's no 10-day cure period for scoring documents, only eligibility documentation. If any of this if any of this documentation isn't provided satisfactory, then the application would be declined prior to scoring.
Matt, can I just interrupt a second? Can you explain the definitions of sources and uses? I'm not real clear on that.
Yeah, so
Here, I can, while you do that, Matt, I can open.
yeah, you want to open
okay.
the
All right.
the template.
So here's the template. And again, let me just pause here. You have a hyperlink in the PowerPoint to get to this document.
Right.
You have a hyperlink in the applicant checklist, which is on the sidebar. So you can, look at this document ahead of time. But super simple, straightforward template. In sources right here, you have to list, NJEDA request.
Okay,
right?
so the sources,
NJEDA request 100,000. That's the total. If you have other funds coming in from another source, put that there.
Okay.
Right? So Ford Foundation, $20,000. So your total would be $120,000. Then your uses need to come up in total $120,000. The EDA could be 100%. You don't need to have a match. You don't need to have additional funding.
Okay. So the sources are the income and the use is the expenditures.
Correct.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right, great. Thank you.
It's EDA speak.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks. Go ahead.
And that's why they have to match, because you can't have a outstanding debt at the end, and then we just need to see, just to have everything tied, the ART grant listed there in the sources. So.
And Matt, do you want to talk here about uses and how specific what you're looking for in terms of how itemized those?
Yeah, it could be pretty general. Could be just like, if a nonprofit has its own staff payroll, it could be, it could be pretty high level, basically. So it could be in a large category.
So it could be performance cost. It could be staff cost. It could be materials. It doesn't need to be broken down more specifically than that.
Yeah, I mean, we may ask to have it broken down, but the original submission yeah, it could be very, I call it it's kind of an accounting term, rolled up, like it could be a very broad, category, basically.
Okay, all right, so I think we're good. Debbie, we're good to go on to the next slide?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so scoring overview, second bullet point here. These are the three, sort of big categories that will make a strong application. The ability of your organization to stimulate the local economy, ability of the, and again, we're going to go into detail on this stuff in the scoring criteria. Ability of the organization to contribute to the overall resiliency of the community, post-COVID, justification in your proposal for the use of funds with a reasonable budget to implement the proposed project. Those are three, overview things that the EDA needs strong applications for. Matt, will you talk about the last two bullets here?
Yeah, so this is very legal language. The bottom line is this, that so the eligibility documents that we just went over to go to scoring, they are declined at the staff level without board approval. If you should go on to scoring, you meet those eligibility documents, and then either if you're score high enough to be awarded, or do not score high enough to be awarded, you go to the board for either award, or NJEDA's board, either for award or declination. That's what those two bullets mean. So it's just part of the process.
Okay. Thank you. All right, Deb, we're about to go into scoring criteria. So let's pause for 1 second here, about the process, about eligibility. Are there questions about anything we've spoken about
Yes.
so far?
Yeah. One of the kind of following up on the question, do I have to be a 501c3? Can a fiscal sponsor submit an application on behalf of a group or organization not yet, classified by the IRS, but with a history of proposed activity?
So
No.
what I'm sorry, what's the question there?
No, okay, if an organization does not have their 501c3 status yet,
Yes.
but can they use another organization as a fiscal sponsor that has
So
C3 classification to submit the application?
yeah, so that would be, so a part of the scoring, which is a little further down, which Barb will get into here, is they could partner with a 501c3, and that actually is encouraged in this scoring, as you'll see. So that would be, they can't be the applicant, but they could partner.
Right. Okay. Okay. So it would, yeah.
I think it opens up a new question for us to get clarity about, Matt, which is that the partner would be bringing all of the expertise to execute the project to the table. That's what they're bringing, right? The heavy lift of making the project happen. The fiscal sponsor is the applicant and the, the financial and administrative conduit. They're not doing the project.
Right, and I think the other distinction here would be that you don't need to have a fiscal sponsor if you partner with an existing 501c3. They can be the primary applicant, and you can be one of the partners if you don't have your C3. Is that accurate?
You could be a partner and not be a 501c3. Just regarding going to regarding having an applicant that, so the situation is the applicant is not the applicant is not a 501c3 or is not involved in the arts, right? Is that what
Well,
we're,
not necessarily the arts, but just not having that the official IRS determination.
yeah,
But as long as so if they want to do, if they have an idea for a project, they need to work with another
yeah,
C3.
Can I jump in here?
Please.
I think it presents a challenge
Okay.
because the way that the scoring is set up, we'll go through this, is the EDA needs proof that the applicant has the history.
Right.
The proposal is coming from the applicant. I don't think we have a clear and black and white answer to this. I think
Okay.
it presents a challenge in the way that the scoring is set up, because we're looking for the history of the applicant, right? The work history, the organizational history of the applicant, and the scoring is all set up that way. So I think, Matt, I would say that it's something that we need to look at and consider, and maybe there would be an exception or something like that, but it's not how the scoring is skewed at the moment.
yeah. I mean, so the situation is this: the actual applicant has to, in order to, the scoring is leaned toward the actual applicant has to be involved in
In the activity,
in the eligible
production, right?
yes, to score.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Okay.
so it can't just be kind of like a shell nonprofit entity.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, so whoever you're working, whoever is has the C3 classification has to be engaged in the project itself. It can't just be, say, the community foundation is
Yes,
covering
because at the
you.
end of the day,
Right.
they're going to be held accountable
Right.
for making sure that they're creating increased foot traffic and all the stuff.
Right.
Right.
Okay. All right.
Um,
That makes sense.
Well, and so I mean, are there any other questions about the application process, about the basic eligibility, before we go into scoring? Everything, let me just say one other thing, is the sort of two phases of how the applications will be looked at is very clearly spelled out and documented in that applicant checklist, which can be found in the sidebar of the web page, right?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
It breaks it into the two separate sort of phases of the application process. First phase is you got to get us all the basic documents, the IRS formation letter, tax clearance, blah, blah, blah. If we can't, if you and you applicants are checking off those boxes, you got all your, I can't take credit for this, I wish I could, get all your docs in a row. Right? Get all those documents to us with the appropriate titles, filled out correctly, dates, that they're your current, all the stuff. If all of those boxes aren't checked off on the eligibility documentation portion of the list, your application is not going to go through to the scoring phase. And that's where those are not all checked off. We're going to come back to you and say, oops, the name on your IRS formation document doesn't match the name that you gave us of your organization on the application. Fix this. You got 10 days to get it back to us. You missed that 10-day deadline, sorry, you're out of the running. If you get it back within the 10 days, and that was the only thing we still needed from you, you're going to get advanced into the scoring phase. And then we're going to evaluate your application on the content. Are you doing what this, is your proposal strong enough to do everything that we need it to do to adhere to, our guidelines and the federal guidelines of how this money is going to be used? So that applicant checklist is, printed out, poster size, put it on the walls of your bedrooms and your offices, and live by that if you're thinking about applying for this, because it gives you all of the information in a very clear way. Okay, so any other questions about process or eligibility before we launch into the content of the programs?
One of the questions is, will there be an RFP to organizations? So I assume that means, will you be sending out an RFP?
The application we're scheduled to open the application process. There will not be an RFP, no. Is the answer to that. The application will open, give or take, September 24th-ish is what we're aiming for. We're still working on finalizing application processes and things on this end. The application will open. We will do a blast, right? I'll do an email blast through my big mailing list. Everybody, the information will go out that the application is open. The way that you guys can, kind of keep abreast of that yourselves is keep checking the EDA's website and the programs page. But if you've gotten this information about this webinar, then you're on either my list, New Jersey Center for Nonprofits list. They'll be blasting it. The NJ PAC will be blast, not PAC, BAC will blast it. It'll be out there. But the other thing is, kind of put it on your calendars now. Roughly start looking the third week in September for when we're going to launch, and then you'll know it's open. The other thing is that on September 10th, the EDA is hosting our next webinar, which is to go through the actual application that will be made live, give or take, the third week in September. So I imagine, Matt, tell me if this is correct, by September 10th, will we have the finalized launch date?
I certainly hope so, Barb.
Okay, so that's our, we're moving toward that. We hope so. So, okay, so any other questions, Deb, before we go into scoring criteria? Oh, Deb, your sound is not on, your mic.
You're right, I'm sorry.
Okay.
It's, will there, I missed it. Where is it? Oh, can you show a sample of the tax clearance document?
It's on the Q&A bar. FAQ.
FAQs? Okay.
So FAQs are also in the sidebar. They're live and posted on the sidebar of the web page. And so there are links, right, Matt? There's a link embedded in the FAQ for that.
Yeah, there's a link with instructions.
I think there may also be a link in the applicant checklist for that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
and folks, if for things like that, if there's something that you can't find in our FAQs, but I want to say that we've been, we've tried to be super thorough about making sure that all the information that we're asking for, especially because we're working with folks closely with folks in the arts and culture sector who may be less familiar with this kind of a government application and the kind of detail that we need. We've tried to be super thorough with providing the information, making sure the links are available in applicant checklists, frequently asked questions, scoring criteria, all of the stuff that's public facing at this point. If you can't find something, there's the ART2 email address. It's at the end of this. It's on the web page. It's at the end of this presentation. Send us an email saying, hey, I can't find, or I don't understand, or I don't know how to. And we're trying to answer all of those questions as quickly as possible.
Okay, let me jump in once more. Some people, we're asking you to put your questions into the Q&A, and on some people's screen, that may not show up at the bottom, in the bottom toolbar. If you go to more ... there is a Q&A box to check. So it just helps us separate other conversation from the actual questions themselves. But I'm tracking the ones that are in the chat. And thank you, Kathy, for all the reminders. one of the, well, just to verify, these can be new startup projects. So they don't have to be following up on something
Yes.
New
else,
startup
correct?
projects.
Okay, correct.
New, expanded, old. I mean, let's
Mhm.
jump into scoring criteria, because this will hopefully cement, what it is we're looking for in terms of what is a strong project.
Mhm.
So question number one, and again, the language here, the scoring, this is exactly what you will find in the sidebar and the scoring criteria document. It's exactly what's going to be on the actual application that you will fill out and post online. So straightforward, right? Describe your project, include cost estimates. So 8 points for something that is more specific and clearly more kind of developed, thought out, and so on, relative to we're thinking about doing this. We don't quite have a sense of it nailed down yet, right? Stronger, the more specific. This is why we wanted to get out the door with doing these info sessions, a few months ahead of when the deadline is going to be. So you're still going to have 60 days from when the application launches, but right now you still have part of August and all of, most of September to be thinking, conceptualizing, partnering, build really strong ideas and projects, whether they're new or an expansion of what you already do. Okay. Question 2, site use and access, we already addressed. Pretty straightforward. Use that form. Oh, sorry. I get this all the time confused with, we didn't address it. I get it confused with the budget one. That's, my brain does this weird thing with it. Okay, site use and access. Sorry. Where are you planning on doing your program, project, initiative? Is it multiple sites? Is it one site? Is it in the space that you already inhabit? Is it in the gallery? Is it in, the theater? Is it in the community center? Is it on the street? Regardless of where you're doing it, we need some kind of documentation that says you have, permission or tentative permission from the owner, from the landlord, from the city, from yourself if you own the building, right? That you're going to be able to use that space between such and so dates for the project or program or initiative that you are proposing. The kinds of documents that we will accept to demonstrate this are detailed more specifically in the applicant checklist. So we will accept a letter of intent. We will accept a permit from the city or municipality. We'll accept an MOU. We'll accept proof of ownership. Gonna pause real quick here. Well, Matt, should we pause and ask this? We get hung up in this one with lots of questions. Why don't we keep going and come back to this if need be? I want to make sure we get all the questions. I'm just looking at the time. I think that's pretty straightforward. And any document that you do give us needs to also specify time frame. And we realize that this might not be nailed down in stone because you didn't get the funds yet to do the project, but get whatever you can, so that what the EDA sees is that your idea is not just pie in the sky, but is tied to a specific site. The site, again, has to be within the eligible area, right? It has to be within the 1.5 miles of the rail station. It has to be tied to, the document you print out using our mapping tool. And it has to be for each site if you're thinking of multiple sites. Okay, question 3. How will your project, this is about impact, right? And creating economic stimulus. How will your project increase foot traffic in the local community based on historic traffic data such as foot traffic measurements, ticket sales, audience counts, or other similar measures? We want a baseline. So give us the baseline. What has the foot traffic been in and out of your theater space? Base that on the last year or two of ticket sales and so on, for example, right? And then what's your projection based on this new thing that you're conceptualizing, or this expanded thing that you are conceptualizing? What are you projecting is going to happen because of what you are creating? Question number 4. Explain the level of experience of your organization, the level that you have with similar projects. Demonstrate your ability to complete the proposed project successfully. Include any previous projects that involve arts-based activities in spaces open to the public or municipal spaces, and explain the status of those projects. So this comes, this circles back to what we've already discussed. Is your organization prepared to do what you say you're going to do? Do you have a history of doing it? Maybe you don't have a history, and I mentioned this before, maybe you don't have a history of doing a project of the scope and size that you are proposing, and that's okay, right? We're hoping that this can be a lift, right? Maybe you've never had the opportunity to apply for $500,000, and what you have envisioned is, it's a much bigger version of doing something that you have done in the past, and you're going to be able to do it because of who you're partnering, or you're going to be able to do it because you're going to use EDA funding to bring on some more staff, a project manager, and a director to do such and so initiative. Give us the documentation of what you've done and show us how you plan on doing this thing that is a bigger version. I want to point out that the language here is include previous projects that involved arts-based activities in spaces open to the public or municipal spaces, and explain the status. Spaces open to the public could be your gallery or your visual arts center because it's open to the public. Don't interpret that as we have to have done things out on the street or in public and open spaces, right? If your space is open to anybody who buys a ticket to come to a show, or anybody who walks through your gallery door, or anybody who registers for your ceramics classes, right? As long as you're not saying, no, these type of people are not allowed in, you're open to the public. Question 5 is a 3-parter. I want to point out that in total, question 5, A, B, and C come up to 35 points. So this is sort of the heavy hitter section of the application. The reason for that, so that you understand our rationale, is because these are the things that we have to report back to the federal government on. These are the questions that address how are these initiatives going to address negative impact of COVID. So part A, how will your project contribute to the resilience of your community post-COVID? What's the impact going to be short-term, within 1 year of what you're doing, right? Within 1 year of whatever you execute by December 31st, 2026, how's it going to impact your community? How is it going to impact your community longer term, beyond 1 year? That question is worth 15 points. And what we spelled out here is how should you think about what that impact is? What impact will it have on the local economy? How will your project relate to lifting local businesses, local employment, local arts and culture production, performance, exhibition, preservation, and/or education? So think about the ripple effect that your project has in the community. That's what the EDA does, right? You bring 2,000 folks in to your week-long performance festival. How many restaurants are they going to be going to? How many meals are they going to have? They're going to pay for parking, cabs. They're going to hire young people from the high school to be docents. They're going to do X, Y, and Z in the community, and there's a ripple effect. So think about that, quantify that, talk about that in your application. 5B, how will you activate vacant or underutilized space post-COVID? Here again, that's the federal language, activating vacant or underutilized space. We wanted to get really specific to get folks in the nonprofit sector, and it's specifically in the arts and culture portion of the nonprofit sector, to think about what it is you really do. So we've spelled out here how to think about vacant or underutilized space. It could be classrooms, production areas, galleries, exhibition and performance spaces, public and private buildings, parts of buildings, public or private, empty vacant lots or parcels, streets, blocks, neighborhoods, public spaces, such as parks, playgrounds, arts installations, and so on. So, you know, because I come from the arts and culture universe, I know how genius and ingenious arts and culture people can be. So think about what it is that you do and how you're going to bring more people into those spaces to do what you do, and expand maybe beyond the borders. Do what you do and bring it into the streets. Make me proud. Okay, well, because I'm the, the voice of arts and culture at the EDA, and I'm saying to the EDA, the arts and culture people can carry this. They're going to do it, and they're going to do a really good job. Okay. How will your project contribute to the community's vision post-COVID? So think about the community that you're going to work in, right? You're bringing your project into Dover, into Netcong, into Plainfield, into East Orange, into Hamilton. How are you going to tie whatever it is you're doing with the vision of that community, with how that community sees itself? How are you going to expand on it? How are you going to integrate with it? So in other words, don't be the organization, that's outside of New Brunswick and show up for a one weekend thing where you do a parade through New Brunswick and that's that. And you haven't sought out the advice, the input, you haven't looked at the master plan, figure out what is available and what I said, what's that community's vision of itself and how are you supporting that, honoring that, integrating with that. Question 6, describe the primary focus of the applicant organization and how it's centered around arts and culture in 250 words, and then give us supporting documentation to prove that you are an arts and culture focused organization. This is one of the incentive questions that we built in because we know how important it is to lift and provide extra supports right now to the arts and culture nonprofits. So you get 20 points if you're arts and culture focused, you get 0 if you're not. So you're welcome to apply if you are not an arts and culture focused nonprofit. It could be that you still score 65 points or more if you're not arts and culture focused. If you're not, the thinking is that for sure then you will be partnering with other kinds of entities who are arts and culture focused, since that's the, that's what you're being charged with this grant, right? Give us arts and culture focused activities. If you're not an arts and culture focused nonprofit, then who are you working with so that is the focus of what you're providing? And this may be, whoever asked the question about the physical conduit, physical sponsor, right? Not physical, sorry. Help me out, Deb.
Yellow entity.
Yes.
That's
right.
Yep.
I mean, this question may tie into that. So
Yep.
think about that. Okay, I'm going to go on to question 7 in our scoring criteria, which is the final question. Who can you partner with? And again, this is one of the questions that we incentivized. If you come in with a partner, you get 10 points. If you do not come in with a partner as the lead applicant, you get 0 points for this. We incentivize it very intentionally and strategically because we know that at least one of the lifelines for sustaining arts and culture sector, and also lifelines for lifting communities that are hurting, is to partner, right? Look around. Who haven't you partnered with before? Maybe there are entities. Maybe you're a small arts and culture nonprofit. You're struggling. Maybe it's important to partner now for the first time with a municipality, or maybe there's a for-profit entity who can bring resources to the table that you don't have. Maybe you don't have a full-time development person, and there's another nonprofit you can partner with that's bigger and more robust that you are. You're an expert at doing the arts-based stuff that you do. They're really good and willing to lean in and provide infrastructural and administrative support and help with the applications and the administrative duties, the quarterly reporting that will be required with this. You're going to do all the on the ground stuff. Figure it out. Bring the partnerships to the table. And our hope is that that this can sustain communities and better sustain arts and culture folks going forward, because you're going to be ingenious now and go, wow, there are these other entities in our community. This is plenty of money, 500,000 for our project. It's an opportunity for us to work across some of these lines. You can bring multiple partners to the table. What we want in terms of documentation is a letter of intent signed between you and your partner, or more than one letter of intent if you're working with more than one partner, that details out these bullet points, A through E. So multiple letters, one letter of intent from each partner if you're working with them, detailing out these things. Okay. The next section is about prevailing wage. We're going to talk about that and about what it is and the kinds of projects that might trigger it, and the extra administrative lift that is entailed if you encounter prevailing wage. But before we go on to that, let's pause here and see if there are any questions specific to any of the scoring criteria. And we can go back to any of the questions if need be.
Yeah, I do have a couple of questions. I don't see any specific to the scoring criteria, but one of the questions is, I see, well, Matt may have answered it. Are we permitted to work with municipality parks and recreation for infrastructure and safety? May include that in the application as a partner in the production of the event.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that is so infrastructure, so heavy infrastructure in ART phase 1 was eligible. I guess it's the definition of infrastructure. We have a tighter deadline because the 12/31/2026. It's not supposed to be like a lot of times infrastructure is like storm drains, real estate related. So that wouldn't be eligible. If it is small improvements to a safe a playground or something, then that potentially could be eligible. So it's very much, it can't be substantial infrastructure, I would say, like, drain, yeah.
Right, for the funding, for this funding to include that, you're saying
Yes,
it needs
yes.
to be, yeah.
Yeah. But if it's like light improvements to the area, putting up safety bars, and it's included in the larger project as well. If it's somehow included in the project that's occurring before 12/31/2026, then that would be acceptable. So
Right. And, I mean, just this is sort of obvious that, that the focus needs to be increasing foot traffic through, right? New safety bars in the playground, I don't think are going to entice folks to come to that town to see them.
Yeah,
Right.
it's got to mesh with the rest of the project. It does have to mesh. Yeah. So I was just giving an example. You got to be aware of the rest.
Yeah. No, I mean, and it's a good example, I think, right? So folks should be thinking like, you know, what's good, what can we foreground? What about the vision of our town is interesting, and what's going to bring people here to participate and get involved in, you know, this thing that's happening, or and it may not be a thing that's happening, right? That's just a temporal event. It could be, you know, a good example is, you know, like the Harriet Tubman, you know, monument, right? That was created in Newark. That, you know, that's there. There's an opening and an event surrounding it, but it's something that brings people, you know, permanently over time to Newark now to see this amazing public art installation. Any other questions about?
There's one question about the scoring, which is, are the points for scoring on an all or nothing basis in these different, you know,
In each category?
category?
That's a Matt question.
Many of them are. We'd have to look back at the exact question. So if it says 0 or 7, let's say, on site use and access, we could go to that one. So that one is either you're getting 7 points or 0. But then I think there's another one, click down a couple, Barb, where so this one you could have partial.
Right. Okay.
But if it just says it, 7 or, well, whatever the
Or
total
0,
points are,
yeah.
or 0, it's
It's
either
all,
you
okay.
meet that requirement for the score or you don't. Here, there's a partial, right? There's the in between. There's 15, 8,
Cool.
or 0.
Right.
So it depends on the scoring question. But when you see the scoring, though, if it's just 0 and another number, then either it's all or nothing. If there's a number in between, then you could partially meet it per the score.
Okay, and let's see. We just got one more question. You mentioned a project in Newark, but I didn't notice Newark is one of the 31 municipalities. Did I miss
It is not.
something? It is
No,
not.
Newark is, no, that's just an old, I mean, that's a good example. Yeah,
Okay.
no, Newark is not eligible. They were part of ART Phase 1.
Okay.
So Newark and Atlantic City are both not eligible in this phase 2.
Okay.
Oh, I know. I wanted to just go back to the question about partnering with Department of Recreation and
Yeah.
that kind of thing. Matt, is this a moment to talk about duplication of benefits a little more explicitly?
Yeah. We could talk about it here. Go. Yeah. Just when partnering with a federal institution like that, we have to do a federal duplication of benefits. And that we could run into issues depending on the structure of that partnership, basically, because we have to make sure that the duplication of benefits is due to this being federal monies, and that none of the expenses of the program are being covered by, at the same time by other funds, including federal funds. So
no duplication of funding.
yeah, duplicate.
And is that true also with state funding?
It is true of state funding. It's just that a federal partner would bring much more scrutiny, and
Okay.
so.
Okay, so Deb, we good to go on?
Yep.
Okay. So next section is prevailing wage. What is it? And what kinds of projects might trigger it? Well, I'm just going to say a couple general things, and then this is really Matt does his thing with this section. In what we are working to do is to get as much clarity, nailed down in the application process about prevailing wage as we can. But just a quick overview definition of it is that, you know, it's New Jersey's commitment to ensure that all workers receive payable wages on the job. It's you know, a law that's been developed by the Department of Labor. If you're not familiar with it, it's in general, any projects that include construction or any of the trades should expect to trigger prevailing wage. So if you are, you know, planning a performance festival and you need 10 stages that are built, that are temporary stages that are being built and that are put in the streets for the festival that's going to last for 2 months in New Brunswick, who's building those stages? Probably carpentry companies that you bring in from the outside. Those you know, those construction companies or those carpenters need to be vetted through the Department of Labor, aka they need to be on the Public Works contract list, which are the vetted folks. They need to be paid a certain wage. They need to have certain certifications and so on. So you would need to build those higher wages into your budget, right, into your sources and uses application, into what you're taking into account for the project, so that you don't get caught off guard and think we're going to bring in our handyman, who's just a guy that we use, who doesn't have, not a public works contractor. You need to build, you know, the short answer is you want to build the extra monies in to what you're thinking about, and you need to build in the extra time for the kind of paperwork and administrative responsibilities and reporting that you would need to adhere to if prevailing wage is triggered. I'm going to let Matt take it from here. Those are the sort of general notes.
Yeah, just the general guidance, if there's any even light, like electrical work, or a screw goes to a screwdriver, and you're using, in particular, an outside, you know, handyman for, or anything like that, then, you know, it triggers prevailing wage. Or EDA, just the structure is, it's built on real estate and loans. So we're trying to fit a arts program within it, but we still have this tie back to real estate that we have to comply with. So just be mindful of it. The application will have questions on it, which kind of help an applicant guide whether prevailing wage will be triggered or not. And if it is, if it does seem like it'll be triggered, then we'll ask for some of the information up front on the application. It does have to be, not only do you have to budget for increased pricing, but you would have to choose from a list, and it'll be on the application, of public works contractors, registered public works contractors. It's also in the FAQs as well, but a link to it. So,
and there are a few things that we have gotten. What happens inside of the EDA is if an application looks like prevailing wage will be triggered, that application has to get reviewed in-house by our labor compliance people. And so, you know, that application will be scrutinized with a fine-tooth comb, and they'll say yes or no whether or not prevailing wage in fact has to be adhered to. What they have given us a couple of guidelines that we know for sure, which we've kind of learned the hard way. Here's one of them. If you are considering painting murals, if murals, prevailing wage will get triggered. There's all the reasons why this doesn't make sense in the arts and culture universe. So be it. Prevailing wage will be triggered if you are going to paint a mural on a publicly owned surface. So if you're thinking about murals on a street and you need to get permission from the city or the municipality to paint there, it's publicly owned, prevailing wage will be triggered. And what that means then is you need a mural painter who is a public works contractor. As an arts person, I'm hard pressed to think of any mural. I don't know any mural painters. They've all gone to art school. They have not also gone to through the Department of Labor training to get certified to be a public works contractor, blah, 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 blah. Doesn't make sense. It's how the law is written. We can't get around it. The way around it is don't paint your murals on publicly owned surfaces. And then you're going to work with the artists and the folks who do that work. Otherwise, you got to bring in public works painters, right? Okay. Another thing we have learned is if you're kind of a theater space or you're, this is not one of the, I've just been using this as an example. Visual Arts Center of Summit, right? Summit, New Jersey. Let's say they have to build, lots of temporary walls for this jumbo exhibition that they're going to have. If they use their in-house staff people who are their W-2 employees to build those walls, they're good to go. Prevailing wage will not get triggered because those folks are on staff. If you're a theater and you're using your staff people to hang up the new rigging for the new lights or to build the sets, your W-2 employees, prevailing wage is not going to be triggered. If you're bringing in outside people to build that stuff, it might get triggered. One question that has come up that we don't have 100% clarity about, but we're working on it, is we think that if you hire an outside company to build the sets that you need for the big performance festival you're doing, and you buy those sets using the EDA's money, right? You buy a prefab set, somebody else built it somewhere else, you buy it from set building company, you buy those objects and you bring them into your theater. We think that's not going to, that shouldn't trigger because you're using EDA money to buy this thing. You bring it in, you do it, you do it. Are there any other scenarios, Matt? I mean, you want to correct or change anything I said, or do you think there are any other scenarios that we have clarity about?
I know someone just asked in the chat regarding sculptors. If you email the ART Phase 2 email address that is coming up in a slide or two, we could forward that on to our PW team. There's a whole separate team that reviews these. Those kind of detailed questions we could try to get you an answer to. I don't know offhand without speaking to them. So just wanted to say that. No, I mean that's generally a broad description of it, Barb.
Yeah. Okay.
What we do is if there's very specific questions regarding, in particular, prevailing wage, we forward it on to the departments that will be making that determination to try to get the best information we can.
And again, there's more information. You can go to these links, right? That are in the slideshow. Here's the link to search the DOL Public Works Registered Contractor list. You do that by county. So if you're thinking, that you're going to trigger it, you go find the type of worker who you need. By county, it'll tell you how much you need to pay them, and you'll see a list of vetted contractors. And so you can build that information then into your application.
Can I ask a question about that? What if there are no sculptors on that list?
I don't think sculptors would be partners, right? Or sculptors would be the partners working with the.
Yeah, I would feel, because this gets very nuanced very quickly based on the project and stuff. If that particular person gave us a project description and how they were going to use the sculptors, and we could try to get better information on that particular, so if you have a very particular project that you know, is requiring some kind of labor, I prefer to try to forward it on to get you better information.
Okay. For sure, you know, for sure, the setup of a sculpture in a public park where the cement needs to be poured for the, right, for the plinths that the sculpture is going to be set on forever. The cement builder, pourers, plinth builders would trigger prevailing wage.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
it gets really detailed really quick, so I'd prefer to
Yeah.
see the description that would be like, you know, likely in the application, and then we could try to get ahead of it.
Yeah.
to-
And
to
these
try-
are, you know, I just want to say that, you know, this is all new territory for the EDA. So there are things about this process and the application that are not perfect, right, for arts and culture. On the other hand, $15 million is nothing to sneeze at. So let's get it out there in whatever
Yeah.
ways we can to the arts and
Right.
culture sector. Here, if you haven't already been to, you know, the webpage for this program, there it is. Top item, send questions about your applications or the program to this email. And if you want to go ahead and scan the QR code for the application information session that the EDA is hosting on September 10th, there's the QR code that will take you right to the registration page. You can also find that information on the program web page. So if you can't scan it, go to our web page at the NJEDA.gov ART phase 2, and you can register through that link. I just want to be clear. I don't know, Deb, you already asked this, but projects in Newark are not eligible this time around. That was ART phase 1. Newark and Atlantic City are not part of this, are not eligible municipalities for ART phase 2. So what other questions? We have a little bit of time still.
Yeah, we'll wrap up here. We're not, you know, we're not
Okay.
very far from the end. If you are a theater company and you typically use volunteer labor to build your sets, would that be allowed in this project? Would you need to hire contractors and hence trigger prevailing wage?
I'm sorry, Debbie, what was that again? It was if.
Okay, if you normally use volunteers to build your sets, etc. Okay, does that, can you still do that, or do you have to hire people for those that type of work?
I believe we're gonna check on that. But
Okay,
I email that question because we haven't
right,
dealt,
okay,
like EDA has never dealt with volunteers before. Usually, you know, usually it's paid labor. So just
okay. I will
yeah, yeah,
I will send that on, and I'll copy Matthew Whelan who asked it.
yeah.
All right, I think that's the only. We have a follow-up on the one question about the Passage Theater. I don't know if you saw that, Matt. Is it okay if the two separate projects are both Passage Theater plays? My application is for more theatrical performance at my playhouse. McCarter's application is to work with Passage to write a brand new play that will premiere at an abandoned warehouse.
So that would seem like two different
Right.
projects. It doesn't seem like and it's different locations, right? Too, I believe.
Correct.
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
That would be separate. Yeah.
Okay.
I see one here in the chat. How will the funding be released to the grantee?
It'll be we're gonna try to make it a wire. Many to the grantee. Is that the question?
Yes.
Okay.
Another question about, will funding be released ahead of the project or after proof of delivery?
It's a, yeah, so it's a pay forward.
Yeah.
I kind of skipped over to the eligibility documentation. It's a pay forward disbursement after the award. So after scoring, it goes to board. The awards are made at board. Then it goes to 10-day veto period. Then there'll be a grant agreement. In the grant agreement, before the disbursement will go out prior to the project completion. There are going to be there is recapture language in the grant agreement. You have to send in quarterly reports with backup expense documentation, but the disbursement will happen prior to the project occurring, and or can happen prior to the project occurring. And there is just two things we kind of glossed over. There is an insurance requirement that has to be approved by our insurance broker based on the project scope. And prior to disbursement, if prevailing wage does apply, then we need approval that from our PW team that there is a contract with a public works contractor. So
Want to invite you to become a member of the center. We have a 10% discount for people who join after this webinar. We give you a month, and you go into our membership page and just enter horse NJ, and because horse is the New Jersey the state animal. Also check out our events page. This webinar and those that we offer, those that some of our partners offer, are highlighted in gray, and then we have other program presenters who offer things that are beneficial to the nonprofit sector. So, and if you have or know of programs that you would like us to put on our calendar, please send them to us. We cannot post any fundraisers. It's just educational programming. Some upcoming events, just so that you know, tomorrow there is an event called A New Way Forward virtual series. This is about creating intentional hybrid and online joyful spaces to bring people together and have presentations that are human and friendly and enjoyable, not just educational. So I thought you might be interested in that. That's tomorrow at 10:30, and again, it's free. On August 22nd, we are offering a webinar from the Department of Labor, maybe relevant to what we've been talking about a little bit earlier, the New Jersey wage and hour laws, and what nonprofit employers need to know with changes in the minimum wage, changes in employee classification and overtime, that sort of thing. So hope you can let us, join us, or let other people know that this is available. And again, this will be, these things will be recorded, and some of them are available right on our YouTube channel. If not, you can contact us and we can share recorded webinars with you. Finally, save the date. Wednesday, December 4th in Somerset, New Jersey, we are going to have our annual New Jersey Nonprofits Conference. Please join us there. It's always a wonderful event, and we just, it does tend to sell out. So we'll be opening registration on September 4th. So be looking for our email. And again, I want to thank Barbara Bickart and Matt Boyle from the New Jersey Economic Development Authority for providing this information. I'm really excited that we've had so many people express interest. That's what we want to do, is we want to let you all know that here are opportunities. So I'll be sending, as I said, all of this information to you in the follow-up letter. And I want to really appreciate everything that you're doing, Barbara and Matt, for the New Jersey nonprofit community and for our communities all across the state.